Now we move into the third annual WMMA Scene Awards. So I have 6 awards that I'm going to be giving out. We have Prospect to Watch in 2022, Submission of the Year, Knockout of the Year, Breakout Fighter of the Year, Fight of the Year, and then finally we are going to name a Fighter of the Year. So we got 6 awards. All of them are going to be pretty darn good. I had these all written down on, I have a dry erase board. I wrote all of these down and went over each one individually, had a list of nominees for each one. Some of these were pretty easy to pick. Some of them were very difficult. The first award I'm going to do is going to be Prospect to Watch in 2022. And this, to me, was the absolute hardest one to pick because there are just so many good prospects out there to watch. So what am I looking for in a prospect to watch over the next year? Well, first off, I try to avoid fighters that are already signed to either the UFC or Bellator, the big 2. Now, that's not to say that you can't win this award if you're in those promotions. For example, I had Sumiko Inaba as a nominee for this one. She signed to Bellator. However, she's only 3-0. It's because she made her debut for Bellator. So she was eligible for this just because she was inexperienced and because I wasn't going to be prejudiced against her because she's in Bellator simply because she made her debut for them. But for the most part, this award is almost always going to go to someone outside of the big 2 promotions. Out of all the nominees I had, I decided to choose Octagon Flyweight Champion, newly crowned Octagon Flyweight Champion, Teresa Bleda. She is the prospect to watch in 2022. So Bleda fought 4 times in 2021, finished 3 of her opponents, only went to decision once in 4 fights this year. She's 5-0 altogether. And just 2 days ago, before the time of this recording, she was crowned the Octagon Flyweight champ, finishing her opponent, much more experienced opponent, in the first round. This young woman is an absolute beast of a fighter. Before she made her pro MMA debut, she was already an experienced amateur. Then she entered the Octagon Underground tournament, which was a one-night tournament with basically it was MMA striking, small gloves, striking. Takedowns were allowed, but I think they had like 20 seconds or less allowed on the ground. So mostly it was an MMA style striking tournament. And she won that over much more experienced opponents. And that was at bantamweight. I believe she made her MMA debut at bantamweight and then moved down to flyweight. And she just finishes out the year as a new champion for Octagon. If you don't know who Teresa Bleda is yet, you got to go look her up. Go watch her past fights. She is your prospect to watch in 2022. So for the next award, we're going to move over to Submission of the Year. So what do I look for in a Submission of the Year? Well, there's a few things. I like to look for stakes in the fight. Like were there high stakes in the fight? The fight doesn't necessarily have to have high stakes, but you know, if there's high stakes in the fight, if there's more, you know, oomph to the fight, and you can get a good submission in it, then that will rank it higher. Complexity of the submission. The more complex the submission is, the more eye-catching it's going to be. For example, a twister. If you can get a twister, it's going to be hard to beat that for Submission of the Year, or a go-go plata, or a flying triangle, etc., so on and so on. So fancier the submission, the nicer it's going to look. The skill with which you put on the submission, that's going to factor in as well. Like how well you put that submission on, how cleanly you put that submission on. Those are some of the factors I look for in Submission of the Year. So the Submission of the Year for 2021 is going to be none other than Juliana Pena submitting Amanda Nunes in the second round via rear naked choke at UFC 269. Now, this is not a fancy submission by any means whatsoever. It's not complex. It's not fancy. It is very simple, but it works more than almost any other submission. That's why it's great. The skill with which she put it on, not the greatest, but I'll tell you what works. I'll tell you what won the submission of the year. The absolute high stakes, the upset factor. Pena was an enormous underdog in this fight. Went in there against two-weight champion Amanda Nunes. Absolutely beat her up en route to getting the submission. Slapped on this rear naked choke. Upset of the year. How could you not call this the submission of the year? And I apologize for the poor quality of the photo. It was hard to find, a high quality photo of the actual submission. Google image did not do good. So congratulations to Juliana Pena for winning submission of the year. So next we move on to just about everyone's favorite, the knockout of the year. So what do I look for in a knockout of the year? Well, very similar to submission. How fancy was it? How flashy was it? Flash wins points. Flash scores points. What were the stakes of the fight? Was the fight for some stakes? Was it for a title? Was it, a number one contender fight? What made you really want to watch this fight in the first place? So stakes are big as well. Also, was the opponent out cold? Out cold, walk-off submissions are going to score much higher than, TKOs or a fighter where the opponent was like dazed and out, like the lights were on, but nobody was home. Not quite as good as someone being absolutely knocked out cold. So, without further ado, the Knockout of the Year award goes to Emily Ducote, who knocked out Danielle Taylor in the first round at Invicta FC 44 to capture the vacant Invicta FC Strawweight Championship. This knockout was absolutely amazing. Everyone was calling this the Mortal Kombat style knockout. Ducote caught Taylor with a right cross that had Taylor absolutely dazed. She was out on her feet, rocking on her feet. And you could practically hear Shang Tsung say, "Finish her!" Ducote launched the left leg up for the kick, knocking Danielle Taylor to the ground, out cold. Absolutely amazing. Easily the runaway for knockout of the year. This fight had it all, or this knockout had it all. The flash of the cross followed by the high kick, the fact that it was absolutely brutal. It looked like something out of a video game like Mortal Kombat. It had the stakes. It was for a championship, the Invicta Strawweight Championship. And Taylor was out cold. So this award was easy to call. Now, honorable mention goes to Lucia Sabova, who knocked out Christina Netza via high kick in the first round at Octagon 22. That was another stone cold knockout via high kick where Christina Netza just fell face first onto the ground, out cold. Also, honorable mention goes to Rose Namajunas, who high kicked Weili Zhang and then followed it out with punches. Now, Zhang wasn't knocked straight out cold. She was silly. The lights were on. Nobody was home in that one. So that was another one as well. So that is your winner for knockout of the year. Congrats to Emily Ducote. Absolutely fantastic knockout. So next we move on to Breakout Fighter of the Year. So what makes a breakout fighter? A breakout fighter is someone who starts off, relatively unknown or completely unknown, and then ends the year basically everyone knows who they are. they made a big name for themselves, whether it was a series of wins or a single win or just their overall accomplishments throughout the year. And it drew attention to their name. Like by the end of the year, everyone knows their name. So that's what makes a breakout fighter of the year. This one was hard. I had two finalists, and I struggled to define, which one of these two broke out over the other. I don't like to do ties, but this one I really felt I had to do a tie. So your 2021 Breakout Fighters of the Year is a tie between Saori Oshima and Seika Izawa. Oshima started out the year coming off of a loss in December. She won 3 straight fights in the Deep Jewels Atomweight tournament to capture the vacant Atomweight title. 2 of those fights came on a single night. So she had 1 win before, 2 fights in a single night, captured the Deep Jewels Atomweight title. Then she got the call up to RIZIN and defeated RIZIN star Kana Asakura via split decision. She came into that fight completely unheralded and shocked everybody. That fight, I just looked at it yesterday. That fight, it's on YouTube on the RIZIN channel, has over 2 million views now. It was a huge upset, absolutely shocking. I mean, Oshima is actually a microweight. Like the red belt she's wearing in that picture is the deep microweight, 97 pounds champion. And she moved up to atomweight, captured the atomweight title in Deep Jewels this year, and then got the call up to the big Japanese show in RIZIN and defeated RIZIN star Kana Asakura, the 2-time title challenger. So Oshima was definitely had a breakout year. And then Seika Izawa on your right in the yellow, she started out the year. She had defeated the Deep Jewels strawweight champion Miki Motono in December. Was supposed to rematch, this time with the title on the line, because her win before was a non-title bout. Rematched her with the title on the line, captured the Deep Jewels strawweight championship, moved down to super atomweight at 108 pounds to take on Shiyu Park in Deep on one of the bigger Deep shows. Defeated her via decision. And then, of course, just last night on New Year's Eve, took on one of the all-time greats of the women's divisions and tied probably for the all-time greatest atomweight in Ayaka Hamasaki, and finished Hamasaki in the second round, one of the 2 upsets of the year. So Izawa pulled it off at the last possible moment. Obviously had a breakout year. Everybody is talking about her. There's already been several articles on different MMA websites talking about her, basically telling people who she is now, because everyone's like, who the heck is Seika Izawa? And most people were like, and why is she getting a fight against Ayaka Hamasaki? Unfortunately for her, that was a non-title bout, but the rematch for that title is going to be coming. So for that reason, starting off the year with fairly humble origins and then finishing them off on a high note with a crescendo, basically, your breakout fighters of the year had to do a 2-way tie between Saori Oshima and Seika Izawa. So now we move on to the fight of the year. What do I look for in a fight of the year? I want back and forth action, okay? I don't want one-sided, sloppy action. I want good back and forth action. I don't want to see a one-sided beatdown. To me, a one-sided beatdown isn't even going to win fight of the night, let alone fight of the year. That's just not going to happen. So when I look for a fight of the year, I look for good back and forth action. The longer it doesn't have to go to a decision, but the longer a fight goes on and the more back and forth it is, the higher the points it's going to get. Now, granted, you can have a good back and forth fight and that ends in a finish, and that's fine. That's cool. I'm not saying that it can't win. I'm just saying it's not, it doesn't rank as high. Also, the stakes of the fight. Is there a championship on the line, a title fight? Is there, is it a number one contender fight? There's got to be some oomph on the fight. Or it doesn't have to be, but that adds to it. And it's just got to be an absolute barn burner of a fight. And this fight, I went back and watched it just to make sure that it stood up. And Tani Torres versus Sarai Orozco at Lux Fight League 15 on August 6th for the inaugural Strawweight Championship held up. This fight has stood the test of time over several months. You know, it wasn't just, oh my gosh, it was so awesome, and then you go back and watch it and it doesn't look as good. No, this fight has held up. This was the absolute fight of the year in my eyes. I almost knew it was going to be when it happened, but I had to go back and watch it, and it's definitely held up. So this fight had it all. Absolute back and forth action. These two fighters battered each other over the course of 5 rounds en route to a decision. And it was just non-stop action too. Like, there really weren't any dull moments in this bout. It had a very high pace. It also had the added oomph. And not only was this for the inaugural Lux Fight League Strawweight Championship, it was the final of an 8-woman tournament to crown that championship. So this fight had it all. Good back and forth action. It lasted a while. So the action just kept going. They kept the pace up. The finals of a tournament that crowned a new champion. This fight had it all. Now, you can go watch this on UFC Fight Pass, Lux Fight League 15. It went down August 6th, and it was the main event. This fight, absolute barn burner. Easy pick for me for fight of the year. So now we move on to the final category, fighter of the year. This is a hard pick because there's a lot of good fighters that did really well this year. And I even put out a community post asking on does a loss in a year disqualify a fighter from winning fighter of the year if they do well after that, or in spite of that loss? Like, if they do enough, can they overcome that loss to win fighter of the year? There are some good arguments for no. And I thought, that was pretty good. Like I said, this was not easy for me to pick fighter of the year just because there were so many. But for me, for fighter of the year, I had to give it to Stamp Fairtex of One Championship. Stamp started out the year on a low note. She had lost both her Muay Thai and kickboxing title the year before. Comes into 2021 and suffers her first MMA loss to Aliona Rasohina in One Championship. But you know what? Stamp had an absolutely stellar year in spite of that, because that loss was all the way back in February. She then entered the One Atomweight World Grand Prix in the first round, avenged her loss to Aliona Rasohina, picking up a decision. Really amazing fight too. That was a fight of the year contender. Then moved into the second round and took on Julie Meza Barba and made it look like easy work. Then she went into the finals, went up against wrestler Ritu Phogat. And keep in mind, Stamp comes from a striking background. Went in there against a grappler, Ritu Phogat, and submitted her via armbar in the second round. So here you have someone who only started MMA in the last, 2 years? And is already submitting grapplers. Captured the One Championship Atomweight Grand Prix title, belt, that huge silver belt she has on her shoulder in the picture. And earned the number 1 contender spot. She's going to face One Atomweight champion Angela Lee sometime, hopefully within the first quarter of 2022. So I think Stamp earned that Fighter of the Year. I've been thinking about that for a while now, and she definitely confirmed it for me. Because it's one thing to come into a year, only fight twice, and win both, and then say, oh, well, this girl's a champion. She fought twice and defended her title. She should automatically win Fighter of the Year. Or to come in as an underdog and be, oh, shoot. Okay. Sorry, my computer froze up for a second. Or to come in, capture a title, have a defense, and look good doing that too. So yeah, you tend to want to favor winners in this award. But I think another thing that makes a great fighter is the ability to overcome things, to overcome difficulties, to overcome losses, and just show that you are able to grow and not only surpass that loss, but to move on to bigger and better things as well. And to me, Stamp Fairtex did that. I saw a lot of people saying, Rose Namajunas should get it. Rose did really well too. She came into the fight against Zhang Li as an underdog, finished her in less than 2 minutes, rematched her, was forced to face her again, and defeated her via a split decision. Had a much tougher fight the second time, but showed that she had, was the better fighter. Some people were calling for Valentina Shevchenko. Look, I'm sorry. You go into a fight, a 1,200 or 1,400, minus 1,400 favorite. It's hard to give someone credit for beating someone that they were supposed to absolutely demolish, especially when it takes you 4 rounds to do it, when you're expected to go in there and demolish them from the beginning. So I couldn't give it to Valentina Shevchenko. And Juliana Pena, she only fought twice as well. And look, she won Upset of the Year. If I had an award for Upset of the Year, she'd win it. But her fight versus Sarah McMahon wasn't that great. So I had a hard time giving it to Juliana Pena too. Whereas Stamp, yeah, she started the year on a low note, but she ended it on the highest of high notes just about. And overcoming that loss, avenging the loss. And that's the big thing. She avenged that loss, then won 2 more fights. And as a striker, a striking-based fighter, submitted a grappler. She is your fight of the year, your WMMA scene fighter of the year, Stamp Fairtex. Congrats to Stamp. She earned this. This is not good.